All right, team, welcome. Yeah, that's the subject there, radio communications. I'm going to talk to you about radio communications. First of all, I'm just screen capturing a slideshow in PowerPoint, and obviously the microphone on the computer's on, and I've got my dogs running around in here. It's snowing outside. My phone may ring. So you're here with me. So as if you're at my kitchen table, which is where I'm sitting. So just like if you were sitting here, if something happens in here, you get to hear it. Odds are I won't edit it out. So radio communications, man, it is in the world of flying. Flying the airplane isn't overly difficult, right? I mean, when you think about the complexities involved in driving a car on the interstate in a traffic jam with all that's going on, the flying really is not that difficult. But the challenge in flying is that you've got to have really good radio communications, clear, concise, and correct. And we've got to keep them short and to the point, right? And that would be the concise part. You could also throw out the term brevity. And I know a lot of people that fly that don't talk too much on the radio. They've never been in that environment. Spent the majority of their time maybe at an uncontrolled airfield, had the opportunity to get flight following when flying from point A to B, but didn't because flight following involves communicating, talking on the radio with air traffic controllers. And so that's something that folks avoid, because it can be very intimidating. When you key that mic, the world's listening, right? And some are going to make a judgment call as to how much you've got your stuff together there in the cockpit. I'm going to throw out, if you were sitting here again at my kitchen table, you'd say, I don't have any cue cards in front of me or anything along those lines. By the way, I'm a little under the weather, so if it sounds like it, that's why. And I've had this thing for a couple weeks now, but it's getting a little bit better every day. But here's a couple radio calls. Let's suppose, I don't know, okay, so we're out in the airspace and we're ready to come back, and we got a contact approach, right? And call sign I like to use is 405 Mike Alpha because it's just an airplane we have in our flying organization that I really like. Approach 405 Mike Alpha, 15 Northeast, 8,000 with Oscar, request visual approach runway 17 right. So basically we're in the airspace. I already got ATIS, it's information Oscar, right, is the identifier, and I'm over an approach and I listen. It's quiet. And I make the radio call. Approach 405 Mike Alpha, 15 Northeast, 8,000 with Oscar, request visual approach runway 17. Here's another one. Let's say we're, this is one I practiced often back in the day. Let's say we're getting vectors to an ILS and they're vectoring us to a base leg to intercept the localizer for the ILS. 405 Mike Alpha, left 310, maintain 5,000 till established, cleared approach runway 35 left. Or right, or whatever runway we're going to. Then approach clears us the tower, and I'm going to make a radio call. Tower 405 Mike Alpha, glide slope intercept, gear down, touch and go, 17 right, back to radar. Now here's another scenario. I'm with my wingman, and we're out looking for this contact on the radar, or maybe we've been vectored to an intercept, and bam, I see them. Left 11, slightly below horizon. There's some clouds, so they're easy to pick up, but I want to put my wingman's eyes on those contacts and deploy him out to a Wesen depth so that if I ID these guys as hostile, he won't min range his shots. Viper 1, tally 2 ship, left low, 11 o'clock, black on white, lead trail, 2 deploy, 1's engaged, standby ID. So I kind of just rattled these off and forget what they mean for now. The point is, I was able to make these calls without much thinking. In fact, much like, and I'm going to use the analogy here later on in this video, kind of like the Pledge of Allegiance, right? Could you say that without really thinking much about it? Most can. In fact, it comes automatically. So that's the point to which radio calls should be when you start getting good at them. And that's the mindset I want you to have. The radio communications, you can, fight your way through it, learning it, struggling it, or you can commit yourself to making them as perfect as possible. And I still mess them up every day, but I'm committed to being as perfect as possible. And you should do that in every aspect of your flying, whether it's recreational or if you want to make a career out of it one day. We're in the business of perfection, and that's welcome to this community, right? And if you're around those that just kind of, I don't know what to say, don't care, slack off in the world of aviation, you know what I mean, then you're around the wrong people. So, just like the flying, we should strive for perfection. You should do the same with radio communications. So, what am I going to talk about? Well, my big picture thoughts and philosophy on radio calls. Again, I am not the world's perfect communicator on radios, but man, there was improvement from the day to where I am now. And I use the techniques I'm about to share with you to get good. And I share these with you as, maybe you're flying with me as a student, or you just happen to come across this maybe on YouTube. And what I'm trying to do is give you advice that you could watch and listen to over and over and over again without paying for an instructor to stand there and tell you the same stuff, quite frankly. So this is to help anyone who's learning to fly make better radio calls. So this is what we're going to talk about. So first of all, my big picture thoughts and philosophy on radio calls. So welcome to flying, man. You are part of an organization that I don't know what to tell you. It's kind of elite, right? Not everybody chooses to do it. Not everybody can do it for many different reasons out there, but you're in it now. And it's kind of, I don't know, an elite club. I don't know what other word to use. And I don't mean flying club. It's just a unique set of individuals and people that are a part of aviation. But the point is, when you're up there and someone's down on the ground looking at you, or somebody is holding short for takeoff and you're on short final and they're watching you, they're going to watch you land, right? There's not much else to do, assuming they're ready for takeoff. Tower is watching you. Maybe there's another airplane that, I don't know, for some reason you're flying formation with, or they're watching you, or someone on the ground's looking up, looking at you. The point is, no one outside your cockpit knows your status, whether you're busy, confused, total loss of situational awareness. No one knows that you forgot your most current sectional, that you requested vectors to an ILS and suddenly discovered that you don't have that approach plate in, or you thought you were going to go practice some instruments and you didn't bring the proper approach plates with you, and that you're busier than a one-armed paper hanger, wallpaper hanger. Nobody knows that until you do what? Key the microphone and make a bad radio call, right? Because you could be elbows, and I won't say the other word, total, and I've been there. I am telling you, I've been there. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's, picture it at night, low light, and you're trying to find stuff in the cockpit that you thought was in a certain place. You had your nest built, and if we ever talk about night flying, that's a term I'll use all the time. Suddenly you can't find, nobody knows that. But if I key the mic and make a bad radio call, I've just given a slight hint to all those that can hear me that maybe he's not all together. He doesn't have everything there, right? All his stuff is not in a sock. And on the other hand, man, I could be, again, just all over the place, but I key that mic and make the world's best radio call. Tower controller says to themselves, man, this guy's got his act together. So it's not that we're making crisp, concise, clear, and correct radio calls to impress folks that hear us or to give the impression that we're perfect. It's just, I'm just telling you that is the pride you should take in your radio calls. Because people are listening and they're going to make a judgment call. And I don't want to be a pilot with another pilot in an aircraft sitting next to me holding short, ready for takeoff. And that guy looks at me because I made a stupid radio call and just goes, oh, man. I've had people shake their heads because I've made bad radio calls. I've looked over and they're just shaking their head a little bit, just left and right, subtly. I can see it. That's not a good feeling. I want them to look over at me and go, wow, that guy's got his act together. So, and that's, a philosophy on radio calls. People are going to make a judgment call based on your radio calls. I've found that right from the get-go is if my radio calls, let's say to ground or to clearance delivery, are clear, concise, pristine, correct, my readback is accurate. I wrote what they told me on my knee board and I'm reading it back exactly as they told me. Guess what? I found the flights go much better. I don't know why, it's just something about it. But I make a wrong radio call or I call clearance delivery 5 times and dadgummit, why aren't they answering? And then I find out I'm on the local FBO's frequency and they think I'm asking for gas. Right. And then now the whole ride's just crazy. Right. So these radio things are very important. And there's very rarely a time, and we'll talk about this here in a second, where radio calls have to be rushed, right? Very rarely do our calls have to be rushed. So we'll take our time, think about what we're going to say. I'm going to teach you some things here of how to make these radio calls clear, concise, and correct, and use a little bit of brevity at the same time. By the way, you can see my mouse right here. And again, I'm just recording a PowerPoint slideshow. So that's my philosophy. Let's talk about some points on specifically how we can make our calls better and build confidence, by the way. That's probably a very important bullet point here as well, but I don't have. So I kind of had it so that these things would come flying in, and I guess I got to go to slideshow to do that. And instead, I'm on preview. So you get a peek at each of these bullets. So let's just talk them. You do not need to rent an airplane or hire an instructor to improve your radio calls. Man, I cannot tell you how many times driving from home to work or from work to home, I have practiced radio calls. The example there, we were tally 2 ship, left 11, slightly low, black on white, one's engaged, 2 deploy, standby ID. That call I practiced. Oh man, I won't say hundreds, but I would say dozens and dozens of times driving home from work. I had about a 9.5, 10 mile drive to home, and it was in the country driving along, and I'd see a small herd of cows over to my left. Tally 8 cows, slightly low, black on green, 2 deploy, one's engaged. I would practice that call, that engagement call with cows, and then in my mind, and that's if I saw stuff. And relative to my nose position, that is where my airplane is pointed, I would make sure I could call out accurate clock positions, because nobody wants to say left 2 o'clock. That's wrong, right? Because everything left has to be 12 or less in terms of clock position when you're trying to put somebody's eyes on. And by the way, this technique I use also in the cockpit in general aviation. If I'm flying with somebody, flying with a student, he's got the radios and he's looking around, I go right there, left 11, slightly high, and then just tell him we've got the traffic in sight. And that student can make that radio call. But you can practice it without paying for an airplane and an instructor. And you got to find, man, if we all laid out our calendars, a weekly calendar, monthly, there is no time available to do anything. But if we actually began to look and analyze what we're doing from sun up to sundown, from the time we wake to the time we shut our eyes at night, there are little slivers of opportunity here and there to practice your calls. And driving is one of them. In fact, today's technology that wasn't around when I was younger learning all this stuff, you could type out a perfect radio call, recite it, record it on your iPhone, and just listen to it 18 times on the way to work. You can get creative. I'm an index card kind of guy. From the day I first learned to start flying or any of this aviation stuff, I use index cards. Question on the front, answer on the back. Question on the front, answer on the back. Ops limits on the front and what it pertains to on the back. Instrument related question on the front. What's the limit for this? What's our holding procedures, etc. Answer on the back. Well, same thing with this index card and radio comms. You could say short final to 17 left. And on the back would be your radio call for that. Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, short final 17 right, touch and go, back to radar, touch and go, back to you, or full, I don't know, you make up your own. The point is, you can practice that. Keep that index in your car, always, just keep it there. Glove compartment, in the center console, keep one in your desk at work. Hey, you're scheduled for the staff meeting and the boss is 10 minutes late, sit there and you can practice your radio comm. There are slivers of time in your life you can do that. We all take some sort of break, I would hope, to eat lunch, and maybe you leave the facility to go to McDonald's and eat lunch, Well, maybe eat in the break room for the next 6 months and save that travel time to McDonald's and the wait time at McDonald's. Bring your brown bag lunch and practice your radio calls during that 30-minute or hour break, whatever it is at lunch that you take there. Again, we've just identified another sliver of time in our lives that we can carve a little bit of time away to become perfect in the world of aviation with regards to our radio calls. And then I recommend, there's a lot to learn in flying, particularly radios. And so our effort in getting good at everything can somewhat be deleted if we focus on all 100 possible radio calls that could be made out there. Instead, let's pick some that we know we're always going to do when we go fly. And it depends where you're flying. We're always going to talk to clearance delivery. We're always going to talk to ground. We're always going to talk to tower. We're always going to talk to departure. We're going to do some area work, and then we're always going to talk to approach. And then we're always going to talk to tower as when we get handed off from approach to tower. And then we're always going to go from tower to ground. So there's some very fixed, canned, standard calls that you could pick and just become very, 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 very good at them and know when during your flight you're going to make them. And then there's my Pledge of Allegiance analogy. If I say recite the Pledge of Allegiance, you don't have to think about it. Man, there's just some little switch in your brain clicks, and there's these electrical signals sent to your voice box in your mouth, and your tongue starts to move, and you exhale air. Next thing you know, you've recited the whole thing, and you don't even know what you did. It's because you said it so many times. That's what these radio calls should be like. Now, there are some non-standard ones out there that I never would predict that they would have asked me, or I would have to tell them, but I'd say 85-90% of our radio calls are very standardized. Very standardized. So pick one, maybe two, and just become very, very, very good at it and move on to the next. And then become very, very good at it and then go back and revisit the one prior that you became good at it. Now we're very, very good at two, and then we'll add a third one to it. So let's look at just a few more specific things. I will tell you, I do this every single time. If I'm flying in an aircraft that has my call sign or tail number placard to the front of it, when I key the mic and look at that, or when I key the mic to talk, my head and my eyes go over and I look at this thing and I just read what I see. Sometimes you don't have this. I've been in an airplane where you'd see where it was, but it fell off somewhere and no one knows where it's at. But I know what it is, and I write it down on my knee board, on the piece of paper on my knee board. And every time I key the mic, who I'm talking to, who I am, and when I want to give the who I am part, I'm looking down and I'm reading. I'm a simplistic-minded individual. If I leave it up to my brain to do this for me, I will mess it up. So I have to look down and just read what I'm looking at. And I'm reading this right here. So look at that call sign placard. And you know who you're talking to, right? Because you've thought about it for 30 seconds before you ever key that mic. All right, we're calling approach. We're calling approach. We're calling approach. Approach November 4882 Lima, and then blah, 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 whatever it is we've got to say after that. But that initial call said, look how good that was. Because I practiced what I was going to say, approach. Okay, approach. I'm going to go to approach. And then I looked at the placard and simply read what I was looking at. Before you ever call approach for the first time, just note your altitude and heading before you key the mic and read that information to them. And your location, and I've got that on another bullet point here. And that was one of my example radio calls. Approach November 4882 Lima, 15 miles to the northeast. What's this altitude on this altimeter? 6,200, descending to 6,000, heading 360. I don't know what the heading is on there. I'm just kind of making it up as I go along. With information, Oscar, looking for 17 right. That's it. Who we're talking to, who we are, where we're at, what we're heading, what's our heading, what's our altitude, and then what we want. Real simple radio call. But look at this so that when you key the mic and you start talking, and then you realize after the fact that they're going to want your altitude, so you pause and we all know where the altimeter is, but it does take a second to bring your eyes to it and interpret what you're looking at, right? Especially on some of these analog ones, right? Is it 6,200 or is it 7,200? Don't let that pause occur when you got that mic button pressed. So figure out what you're going to say first before you key the mic. Have some sort of organized method of keeping information on your knee board. This is what I call a mission data card, and it's made for a very specific airplane. I've got all my numbers there. I've got some arrival information at the airfield we fly out of all the time. And then there's another airfield that we do all our practice work at that we go to often. I've got some information there. And I built this when I first started flying in this area, so it was nice to have this. You know, obviously most of it's committed to memory now, but at least I have it down there, all the frequency, all this stuff. But look down there, I've got an area for ATIS, so I can write the departing ATIS when we're leaving the airfield there, and then when we're done with our area work and I go back to ATIS before we call approach to come home, I can write the ATIS down there. So as I key the mic and I tell them information, I don't have to pause. I'm looking down, right? So my eyes are all over the place. Approach, I know who that's talking to. My eyes go over to the placard, November 882 Lima. My eyes go to the altimeter, and I've already looked at it, so I know what it reads, 7,200 feet, heading 360, 15 miles northeast, looking for 17 left. Then my eyes go down to this, and I read back information Oscar. That quick. And so have something here. By the way, especially when you get into instruments, I will tell you the most important piece of mission materials that you can have with you, besides approach plates and your low charts, high charts, and all that, is just a sheet of paper and a pencil, because you will be writing down instructions all the time. And as they read them to me, I write them down, and then when I read back the instructions, I don't read back what my mind thinks it memorized. I read back what I wrote down. Because 5 minutes later, when I need to reference my clearance, limit fix, or whatever it is they gave me, I'm not doing it from memory. I'm looking down on my piece of paper. A crazy analogy, by the way, is writing down as they tell you. Imagine, this is going to be kind of a crazy analogy. Imagine that I'm given the coordinates of a position that we're going to throw bombs onto, right? We're going to bomb some coordinates. And I punch those, and they give me the coordinates on the radio, and as they're reading them to me on the radio, I punch them into the system. I'm up there punching them into the computer or whatever, plugging in the coordinates. Now I have no way to check that what I punched in is actually what they gave me, right? Whereas when they give me coordinates, if I write it down first, now I can read it back. I could read back from my system too as well, but that's uncommon. But I can look down on my paper and verify time and time again that what's in my system is actually what they gave me. Heaven forbid those bombs go where they're not supposed to. So that's kind of a combat analogy to writing the stuff down as they give you the information. So have something like this on your knee board so you've got that. And that's it. Look down at your mission data card. We've already talked about that. So where are radio communications and the priority of things we need to do? Well, here you go. At the bottom. At the bottom. Now, there are some rare instances where communications would maybe take priority. I'm doing some, I'm doing a cross country. I'm talking to Denver Center because I'm doing some flight. We're doing flight following, and next thing you know, they call me out on the radio and go, "Hey, traffic just popped up your nose, 1 mile, co-altitude, recommend 310 on the heading." Well, Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, left 310, climbing, by the way, to avoid the traffic. So whatever I was doing in the cockpit, this radio call and my action to comply with the radio call is probably priority. But these are rare instances. Your priority first is to fly the airplane. You got to fly the airplane. You can't stall trying to make this great radio call and looking at your instruments, or your map, figuring out where you're at because you want to make this pristine radio call. You have to fly the airplane first so that you don't stall while you're trying to avoid Class B airspace. You have to fly the airplane first. And I don't care what kind of radio call. Again, we've talked about some rare exceptions, but I don't care at all about radio calls if I'm not at all sure where I'm at. I have to navigate first. I can look down at my mission data card, look over at my altimeter, make this great radio call, and 8 seconds later I run into the side of a mountain because I wasn't aviating first. You will get calls from controllers that have this sense of urgency. They are busy, and you will read in many, many places and many, many times it is one of the most stressful professions in the world. And if you've ever had the opportunity to go into a RAPCON, a radar approach control facility, and watch those folks at their scopes at work, and I've had the chance to do it many, many, many times, I am telling you, they are gods. I mean, it is unbelievable. And by the way, tower controllers as well. So I'm not pushing anybody to the curb. Unbelievable. So they will have a sense of urgency oftentimes when they call you. That does not, their sense of urgency does not trump your priorities. So there is a magical word that I will tell you I've used thousands of times, and that is standby. Standby. Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, say position, standby. By the way, if you want my position, you got to give me a moment to figure out where the heck I'm at, right? Because I probably don't fly around constantly knowing where I'm at. Let me call up the DME. Let me call up the waypoint relative to where I'm at in the field, so I can give you, let me look at my altitude, right? Let me look at my heading. Let me not hit the ground first. Let me finish this series of stalls first with this student. Stand by. Stand by. And they won't be shocked when you do it. They'll go on. They got 80 other people to talk to. Then when I have whatever it is that they want, when there's a little bit of sliver of silence on the radios, approach Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, go ahead. Yeah, I was wanting to know, blah, blah, we've got some reports of turbulence out in your area. How's the turbulence? Mild, light, severe, whatever. But use that standby. Before you make your initial request with ground or initial contact with approach, have the ATIS information written down. And then when you make your radio call to ground, some places when you call clearance, they're going to want to know that you got the ATIS also. Certainly when you call approach, when you're out in the airspace and you're coming back, or if you're on a cross country and you contact the initial approach control for the field you're going to, they're going to want to know that you got ATIS. So write it down and read it. Here's a mission data card from a flight I had a while back, and you can see November was the ATIS going out. Did some stuff in the air, and coming home, I went to ATIS before I even talked to approach, and the information was Romeo, and I wrote it down. Notice it was just kind of random around there, but I knew where I wrote it, and I knew to look down and read it just right off the card. Because if I've tried it from memory and I've gotten it wrong, or I stumbled through the call, or I did on the radio and it just didn't work. So write that down. So let's talk about your call to ground for taxi. You've got to know where you're at, because they're going to give you taxi instructions, right? That's their job, right? It is a controlled movement area. So know where you're at, and you've got to tell them, right? Now, there's a slim chance they already know, but it's just good practice to tell them, hey, general aviation ramp, Cutter aviation ramp. You can, if there's an FBO with a company name associated with, we're on 5-star ramp. We're at the south end of the runway, because this is where we shut down and now we're start, whatever. You need to tell them where you're at. So you need to know where you're at. Know where you're going on the airfield, and picture in your mind, or look at the airfield diagram like I've got right here, and predict. This is before you key the mic and request taxi. Predict the route they're going to give you. You can even write it down if you want to. You could even predict it looking, hey, we're going to 17 right, and here's where I'm at, and here's the taxiways used to get there. So they're probably going to give me that. So that when they read you back this convoluted, complex taxi plan, you've probably already got it down, at least 80% solution on your paper. So when they read you all these taxiways, Alpha this, and Bravo this, and Charlie 1 this, etc., you've already got it down on your paper in front of you. So if we look at an exploded diagram here, suppose you're in this area here, just general aviation. Again, you could pick the name of the FBO. Your ground controller is going to know that. And say you want to taxi to 17 right for a takeoff to the south, and you're here. Well, what routing are they probably going to give you? Alpha 2, Alpha. To Alpha 1, they may tell you that. So I could write that down. So sure enough, when they come back and say Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, taxi to 17 right via Alpha 2 Alpha, Alpha 1. I can just read back. And I listen to what they tell me. I'm verifying what I'd already predicted and wrote down. And now I just read back what I wrote down. I don't even, and I hate to say this, I don't even have to regurgitate what's in my mind that came from what they just said. I'm just reading what's already on my paper. Now look at this taxiway, this taxi routing all the way over here. What if we were going to 17 left because 17 right was closed? Well, this is one that I would write down. I'm probably going to go Alpha 2, maybe, probably Alpha 3 to Alpha, cross 17 right at Alpha 4 to Golf, Golf to Mike, if we were going on 3-1 here, or Golf to Echo, Echo to Echo 1. I would write that down. And then I key the mic and read back what I've already written down, and those are the instructions they gave me. And then that controller up there is saying, man, that guy's got his act together. And little does he know I prepped for 3 hours. No, I'm joking. But you see the gist. You know what I'm talking about here. There are little tricks here. So know where you're at, predict the taxi routing, and then write that down. Write that down. I do this all the time. Before I even key the mic, like we talked about earlier, my eyes go to the placard. Okay, it's there. That's who we are. My eyes go to my altimeter. Here's my altimeter. What's my distance from the airfield? Because they're going to, remember, when you first call approach, like you're coming home or you're doing a cross country and you're now coming to a controlled airfield with radar services, they don't know where you're at on their scope. They're going to try to find you. And so they're going to want to know your altitude and your distance, and maybe your heading, but that's fairly rare. Sometimes I give it out anyway. But I'm looking down on my piece of paper on my leg, on my knee board. Why? Because that's where ATIS is there. The placard tells me my call sign. The altitude tells me my altimeter, my gyro compass, or my INS, GP, whatever system I have that tells me my heading. And then I maybe, and I've done this before, when I wasn't sure of my distance, and I've got I've got 5 seconds to do this, I can go to my GPS system, Garmin, what is it, 430, 450, and your Garmin 1000. I can go direct and put in the IKO identifier, and bam, it gives me the distance. And now I know I'm exactly 13 miles northeast. Now I have all my data that I need for the radio call, and then I organize it in the order that I want to, and then I say it. Oops, got it wrong. I say it to myself again. I forgot the ATIS identifier. Then I say it again. Perfect, got it. Key the mic and redo it. That simple. It's almost like I'm just rehearsing again, but I've keyed the mic this time, and they get to hear one of my perfect rehearsals. And I let go of the mic button. I just made a perfect, clear, concise, correct, with brevity radio call. They think I am the ace of flying, and little do they know that for 10 to 15 seconds prior, I practiced and rehearsed this. When you make a frequency change, just sit there. Just listen. If you make a frequency change to a CTAF 1228 at some uncontrolled field, just listen. Certainly when you go to tower, just listen. I've done this. I've gone to tower. I'm number 1, ready for departure. Tower, Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, number 1, ready for departure, 17 right. Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, hold short, 17 right, arriving track fit. And I look over to the left, and there's a guy on a quarter-mile final. How do I look? I just told everyone in tower and any airplanes next to me that I don't even realize that there's an airplane, a quarter-mile final, with landing lights flashing. It's big as ever. It's dark against a blue sky background, and I didn't see it. How's my situational awareness? So just listen first. Figure out where you fit into this bigger picture, especially when you go to approach any radar controller. Because you go to that frequency and you hear silence, there is about an 80% chance that someone else somewhere on a different frequency is reading back instructions to the same controller you're about to talk to. And that's kind of there to my second point there. When you hear a controller give instructions and then there's silence, don't say to yourself, oh, okay, I can talk now. That person, that pilot out there that controller gave instructions to is reading them back. That is a requirement. So when I hear the controller giving instructions, I act like I'm reading them back. Turn left 310, maintain 5,000 till established a localizer, cleared ILS runway 17 right, touch and go, or full stop, or back to radar. 1001, 1002, it's still quiet. Key the mic and talk. Just like that. One of the big things that helped me a lot in radios is before I made my radio call to whatever agency I was talking about, I anticipated their response back to me, and I was ready for it. A great example would be clearance delivery. They're always going to tell you, you are cleared to whatever you filed for. Let's say, I don't know, you can come up with that. You're cleared to Alpha November Kilo, as filed. Climb runway heading at or below 8,500 feet. Contact departure on 120.6, squawk 4732. It's a very canned response they're going to give back to you. The data may be unique to me, like the squawk, but the frequency, I already know if I go back to my airport diagram, it's too small here, but your frequencies are up in the upper right corner. I know what the departure frequency is going to be, even though clearance delivery is going to read it to me. So I'm already got part of the puzzle already predicted. I could even write that down as I'm writing down my clearance. And what else is unique is the squawk. Now I have to read that information back, right? So even before I make a call to clearance delivery or any other agency, clearance delivery, Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, IFR to Alpha November Kilo, looking for clearance. I know I'm going to have to read back what they give me, so my mind is already thinking about that read back. So it's almost like 3 radio calls, the one I'm making, their response, and my read back. I can kind of anticipate what is required for those calls. And if I can anticipate those before I actually have to make them, I can kind of practice them in my head or even out loud. If you ever are with me in the cockpit, you can look over. You may not hear it because of the engine noise, but you can look over and you'll see my lips moving before I'm even talking. I'm anticipating, predicting, rehearsing, etc., what that radio call is going to be. Same with tower, by the way. You're number 1 ready for takeoff, and you tell tower, Diamond 405 Mike Alpha is ready for departure 17 right. They've only got 2 options to give you, right? Now there's a third one there. I'll throw it in, Georgie, in there. But they're either going to give you clearance to take off or they're not. And there are calls associated with that, and I could sit there while I'm waiting before I'm ready for takeoff. Maybe somebody's in front of me, and they're going to take off first, right, because they got there first. So I could sit there and practice that radio call to tower and practice the response I know I have to give back to them. Tower, Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, ready for departure 17 right. Then tower comes back with Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, winds 3205, clear for takeoff 17 right. Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, clear for takeoff 17 right. I have to read that back. I anticipated what their reply back to me was going to be, and I was able to practice it before I actually needed it. The other response they could tell you is hold short. Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, hold short 17 right, arriving traffic. Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, hold short 17 right. I can know automatically. And then the third one occasionally you'll get is a line up and wait. So for example, someone lands in front of you and the tower is in a hurry to get you out of there to sequence you in, or they know maybe you're ready to take off. They want to help you out. Usually it's to help them though, because they don't want to get the traffic all bunched up on final. So before that aircraft is off the active in front of you, they can't clear you for takeoff, right? That aircraft actually not only has to be off the runway, but on the other side of the hold short line. But they can still clear you onto the runway. Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, line up and wait 17 right. And I have to read that back. Diamond 405 Mike Alpha, line up and wait 17 right. So those 3 possible outcomes of my call to tower telling them I'm ready for takeoff. You can practice those, anticipate them, and then when you read back those instructions, you'll sound pristine. And all those other airplanes holding short of the runway get to hear your pristine radio call and think you are the ace of aviation. All right. That's it in a nutshell. Some ways to practice. If you got questions, post them. Contact me. For those of you that know me personally, you know my contact information. And these are some tricks, nuggets, if you will. I've said this before. If you know me, we all go around with an invisible clue bag hanging on our belt. And we pick up all these little techniques from different people and different instructors, different experiences, books we've read. You can call them nuggets, you can call them clues, you can call them techniques. And sometimes I hear 4 or 5 from an instructor, and 3 of them work very well for me, and I put them in that invisible bag. Sometimes I get 4 or 5 from this instructor, and none of them work. Sometimes this instructor, I can connect with all of them, and then they go in this bag. So these are some of the nuggets that I have learned, have figured out, stumbled through as I've made my share of terrible radio calls. So I hope that you can take these to heart, practice them, and it will help you make more clear, concise, correct, and with brevity. In other words, keep that short and to the point radio calls. Thanks, guys.